Baba ki Jai. Jai Baba.
Jai Baba. Well, again, I'm here with Meherwan Jessawala, and it's July 13th, 1994, here at Mirzad, a wet, sloppy day outside. Silent stage is past. And Meherwan, last time we had been talking about episodes from Baba's life in the 1940s, generally, and it seems to me we've come to the very eve of the new life, with where Baba suddenly wrapped up his old life activities and embarked into something new.
Yeah.
Would you like to start? Where should we start? Do you remember anything about how that was first hinted at or adumbrated? Or?
Just now you mentioned about a wet, sloppy day. So I would like to mention here that only yesterday Mirzad was so full of people, and if this wetness was there yesterday, it would have dampened the whole the whole event. So it shows how Baba really helps us when we do our best to do any functions for him. A great crowd had come yesterday, and had this weather prevailed, it would have been all a sorry mess.
This room would be
mud, and people would have been in real confusion as to how to carry on with the program. But it was a perfect day, and after everything was over, today we are having
this weather.
So
after the program yesterday, there was a Duni. So the Duni precipitated the rain that comes today.
But I heard that just after Duni, the rain started. So Baba's timing with the rain is really perfect. And in several of Baba's earlier times also, we have noticed that rain seems to have played a very important part during his important meetings. So even I remember in Satara in the early days in 1954, and there was this meeting which he had called for the final declaration or something. And just as he gave out the thing, there was the sound of patter raindrops on the roof. And Baba says, it's what he says is right, and the rains are a witness. It happened in Meherabad in 1954, I think, was it? When those incredible 3 weeks. Was it 54?
54, I think September.
Yeah, and the rains played havoc a day before the gathering started. But somehow everything was good afterwards. But then again in the East-West gathering in November, a time when there is the least possibility of rain, and the rains just poured down and everyone was baptized, as it were.
Were you ever there for any of those duties there were some in the 1940s, I think, that Baba attended. Did you ever go? Were you
in Meherabad?
In Meherabad.
Yes, one of them I was there. I don't remember which year it was, but Baba was there while lighting the tuni, and we were all around. And we just were all concentrated upon Baba, so I don't remember much about the Dhuni, but Baba being there, lighting the fire, and then when he moved off, we just moved off with him. But there was one of the occasions I was there.
There's a film of Baba at a Dhuni, but it might be in the 1950s.
Probably I might be then there when a meeting was called and the Dhuni was lighted. Probably,
Now in 1949, in the early months of the year,
one more incident in the in 1948, I think, the time when Bhuti was brought, I think At that time, there was another must trip that Baba had undertaken with a few of his mandli, like Eraj, Gustaji, Baidul and all. So Baba went to Calcutta. I think it must be that at that time only, or somewhere around that time. And when they returned, and Eraj gave us a vivid account of how taxing it was at that time. Baba was very restless when they reached Calcutta, and they got into this big hotel. I think it was the Great Eastern or something. Very renowned hotel there.
So this was a nice hotel this time.
Yeah, and Baba wanted a very quiet place. So he said that there should be 2 or 3 rooms which should be vacant, and there should be no noise to disturb him. And he recounts how somehow he was able to get a room which had 2 or 3 vacant rooms adjacent, and the mandli had to stay in the furthest room so that no noise came for Baba. But despite that, some excuse or the other Baba would find, and this time it was Eraj was on night duty, he said, and Baba said, "I can't sleep here. What is this noise of hammering going on?" And sure enough, there was a blacksmith who was doing some night hours below in an adjacent plot there. So Baba says, "Go and tell him to stop his work." Just like that. So Eraj goes there and says, he has to of course do all these stories, so as not to be very abrupt about the whole thing. And he just said he had a very sick elder brother, and if he would stop his work now, it's rather late in the night. So with somehow with difficulty, he was able to convince the man, and he said, "Yes, I'm just winding up my work." And he did stop. But then Baba was happy about it. But a few minutes later he said, "No, I'm uncomfortable with this bed in the room." It was a huge bed. So the mandli had to be awakened, the bed had to be taken out. So
another room.
Yeah. Another bed brought in. All sorts of things he kept on doing the whole night. Eventually he says, "No, I can't sleep here, somebody's snoring," and this and that. So they changed the room then. They asked the manager to give them a different room in the middle of the night. So they keep changing rooms. The manager also is very surprised what type of people these are. He had never met such clients. So they kept changing rooms. The mandli on one side getting angry with Eraj, "You are encouraging Baba to do all this. Just convince him and that this room is all right." So poor Eraj was sandwiched between both of the mandli and Baba on one side. Then this constant shifting, then he says, "No, we'll go to some other hotel." So they go to another hotel. There Baba also didn't like that. Then he said, "Let's go back to the original hotel." So they come back, and the manager is rather scared to see them again. Yeah. So it goes on and on. And the way Eraj was recounting, we were all really spellbound as to how Baba could tax the very limits of one's capabilities. Yeah. Even while recounting, I could see the vein on Eraj's forehead swelling up just at the recollection of that event. It was so taxing.
You go to a nice hotel to create the expectations of a nice night's sleep.
Nothing of the kind.
Yeah.
And then there was something happened, and Eraj couldn't locate a certain packet, and he was searching for it, and Gustaji started to make some signs. So, in the meantime, Baba came over. And Iraj was so exasperated. He tells Gustaji, I'm feeling sick with handling two dumb people here. Baba overheard that. Baba says, wait a minute. What did he say? He said, no, Baba, I didn't mean that. Do you think I'm dumb? You call me dumb? And Baba literally for half an hour or so just went on about this dumb business. Eventually Iraj said, I had to apologize again and again for, no, but why did you call me dumb? You think I'm dumb? So this is how I recollect that incident. And fresh from the journeys, these incidents would be recounted by Iraj in great vivid detail. And we could get an idea of the flavor of what it was to be with Baba, and the tremendous taxing way that they had, the amount of effort that they had to make to please Baba was really, only Baba could give them that.
It sounds like when Baba was of a mind to really test his mandalay, he could be impossible to be with. It sounds like.
That's right. He would work you up to the limit of your tolerance and would want to see whether you have reached that limit or not. He was careful enough to see that it happened, and then he would relent.
This story illustrates where finally Iraj blurted something.
So that was it, yes. And then, of course, we now come to the stage of the new life. It was one of the biggest shocks to the Baba community all over the world. So the events leading up to it was, of course, I think it was in early 1949, not early but in mid-49, that Baba said that he wanted to enter into seclusion for 40 days, which was later known as the Great Seclusion. And Baba commenced the seclusion in this blue bus body that's parked over here. And at that time, of course, there was no shelter above, or there was no veranda in front of it. It was in the open. And there was just a big neem tree which grew at the rear end of the bus. A huge big trunk it had. And that was the shade for the blue bus. A big neem tree. And there were bamboo tattas to screen the place. The rest of the mandali also were not allowed to see Baba, and he was in very strict seclusion. A few outside mandali had been called. I remember Jal Kerawala, then Nariman Meherji. They were, I think, here for part of the stay, for part of the seclusion. I remember this because Jal Kerawala, one of Baba's near disciples, was given the task of maintaining a daily diary of this seclusion. And he was a close friend of our family also, so he left these diaries with us later on. And from these diaries also much information was gleaned to write about the Great Seclusion later.
There was a little booklet by that name, Great Seclusion.
That's right. So
Baba had asked him to keep those diaries?
Yeah, Baba had given him the task to maintain a daily diary. And one of the things that I remember is that every night Baba would complain about not getting good sleep, and the main cause of disturbance was the ripe fruit of the neem tree falling on the top of the blue bus, so that being the tin roof, it would make a big sound when it fell from the height, and that disturbed Baba. And the whole night long there would be this dropping of the fruit and disturbance. It was almost monsoon time and quite windy.
June and July, I think, was the time of the Great Seclusion.
Yeah.
Running through July 31st
That's right.
or something like that.
Yeah.
31st.
So it was the
season.
Monsoon season, and it's the time when the neem tree starts fruiting. So I remember that. And Baba, after remaining in seclusion for a few days, he later on when he came out, he said that to add to the agonies of his seclusion, he just got up and stood up, and there was a rack on one side of the bus, and the corner of the rack hit him on the head with such great force that he felt stunned and giddy for some time. And he said it had some great spiritual significance that he had to be hurt like this at that time. It was a nasty bump he had on the head. And thereafter, that corner has been padded up, so that in future when the pilgrims would come and visit this place, their heads wouldn't bump against it.
Oh, so the padding is still visible?
Yeah, you've seen that corner.
I've never noticed.
Corner on the top rack, you'll see one corner is padded with cotton and cloth and all that. So this I remember was one of the occasions, one of the incidents in this great seclusion. Then Baba said that he wanted a change of location. So he wanted to come and continue the seclusion in Pune. So there we were sent message from here that Baba would want to come and stay in seclusion in Pune. So there was a mad scramble again to get a good bungalow for Baba, which should be secluded. So, and at short notice, because Baba wanted to shift from here as soon as we could get a place.
To whom was this order sent to find a bungalow?
Irach was, I think, had been Raus at that time.
I see.
To help assist us in locating a bungalow.
So you were hearing about the seclusion from Irach when he would visit?
No. At that time, we didn't get any information.
Oh, really? You just knew?
This was later on, we got all things, but another thing was that Kaka Baria was the only person who was allowed to see Baba and to serve the meals or whatever other personal chores that had to be done. So I think he was the one allowed to be with Baba. Others were excluded, or even the Mandli. Such was the strictness of the seclusion.
At the time, what did you have any idea of what was going on? You just knew that Baba...
No, it was one of his phases of seclusion, which just was from time to time he would enter into these phases of seclusion, and so we didn't know what was going on. And of course, this need for the bungalow was there, so we all started rushing here and there. Irach eventually located one on the Satara road, and it was high up in one of the hills there surrounding Pune, and an isolated bungalow called Thube's bungalow. Thube was a big businessman in Pune, and he had built a big palatial house for himself there. But the thing was so isolated that he himself was diffident about occupying it. So it was lying vacant there. And Erich, spotting some structure up the hill, cycled up there. We were all on cycles that time. And found this place all deserted and empty. Then made inquiries and somehow located this owner. And he was willing to rent it out. I think probably without rent, I'm not so sure about it, but we got that thing. And then we quickly furnished it and sent the message here, and then Baba shifted from the blue bus seclusion to that place there in Thube's bungalow. Baba liked the place, but the only disadvantage of it was that it was high up on the hill and totally exposed to the fierce winds that would be blowing at monsoon time,
Right.
So the westerly wind blew 24 hours of the day, unabated fury of the wind. And Baba never liked a breezy, windy place, So after a few days stay there, I think a must also was brought for Baba's work then. I'm not so sure, but
I seem to remember that.
You remember that? Is there any mention about it?
I think I do remember something of the kind in the book.
Yeah. So I think probably a must was brought for Baba's work there. Baba liked the place very much, but somehow because of this, or probably his internal work situation demanding, Baba then returned back here and continued his seclusion in the blue bus until the end of it. And that was the end of that seclusion. But after coming out of it, then very quietly Baba revealed his plans to some of the close ones about entering into new life. So this news was kept quite secret from the rest of the Baba community until the time of the meeting. And that was, I think, called sometime in September or something. I'm not sure about the dates.
There was some kind of meeting in mid-August, but then later.
Was it mid-August?
I don't know whether if that's the meeting at which he announced the new life.
That's right. So where he gave the choice of people to come with him, the yes and no. Was it in August or something?
Yeah, the first meeting in August 15th, I think between the 15th and the 31st, there might have been meetings. Anyway, all that is recorded somewhere.
So that the meeting was called. At that time only it was given out, all this thing.
Had you had any sense that a change of any kind was on the way?
No,
nothing.
Not the slightest trace of, not the slightest notion about anything. But in the meeting from our family, it was Papa and Manu were called, and of course Erich was there. So then in the meeting, Baba gave out this bombshell of a news that he was now going to embark on this new life, a life of helplessness and hopelessness, a life of begging and wandering on the streets. But the most difficult part of it for all of us was that once Baba embarked on this new life, he would sever all his connections with his old life people. And he would never see them again in this lifetime. They were never to set eyes upon him. In case they ever came across Baba in his wanderings or anything, then his express orders to all of his old life disciples was to turn their face away and make a conscious and full efforts to see that they never tried to see Baba again. Never ever. So that was the most devastating piece of news that we could ever have from Baba.
How did you feel getting that?
Yeah, it was mind benumbing,
Yeah.
We couldn't imagine such a thing,
Yeah.
So not to have any further physical contact in this life. So at first it was, of course, totally devastating. And as it was Baba's wish, then there was no other recourse but to accept it. So as best as we could, we had to digest this piece of news, And now the atmosphere at the meeting also was awesome, as people who participated in it told us later, that Baba was so serious that never before they saw him more serious than at that time. Yes, the conditions for people who would say yes and accompany him were so forbidding and so difficult that even they were perplexed whether to say yes or no. And Baba, to add more seriousness to it, was said that people had to read these conditions very well, note them, and go out of the hall and fully digest the import of it all. And they were not to discuss with each other. So it had to be their own decision without any interpolation or any other people influencing them or anything. So
that would make a difference.
Yeah.
Talk it over with others.
Yeah.
Come to sort of a...
So no discussions, no arguments, and to come in with the word yes or no, and that was it. So it was quite a somber proceeding that was going on. Yeah. So one of the exceptions was Gunny.
He was always one of the exceptions, wasn't he?
Gunny was the least suitable for physically and mentally. He was not right for this sort of thing. But Baba wanted him to accompany him. So it seems, I think, that he told Airaj to drop subtle hints to Gunny to take the plunge and just say yes. I think that it was so, because otherwise Gunny would never have agreed. All the conditions were just dead against what sort of life he led, And when he came back and he would come and meet us, he was quite friendly with us, So he used to tell us about these new life days that he spent with Baba, and he said, "Oh, it was horrible." The most difficult thing he would say was that Baba would ask them to get up at 4 in the morning. So we would all get up, he said. And then we had to wash our faces. And one of the orders was not to yawn.
Not to yawn?
Yeah. So you had to make a conscious effort never to yawn in the new life. Then Baba said, he said that early in the morning you had to get up, wash your faces and just sit there. They had not to recite any prayers, not to discuss anything, just sit there and be awake.
Funny order.
Yeah, so such orders, you just imagine how we could carry on like this. So you would tell us all these things. Yeah.
Do you have any, to second guess Baba is impossible, but do you have any guesses anyway on why Baba might have wanted Ghani to come specially, to the point of
I wouldn't know that, but probably to lend some wit and humor in the situation, because
so it wouldn't get too heavy.
Yeah, probably, and of course, Gani's days were approaching to the end,
That's
and
right.
probably his last contacts with Baba had to be finished. We don't know what each one's contact with Baba is and what working he has to do. So, so Gani was encouraged to say yes. A sort of tacit way of getting him in, And I think Iraj did drop a hint or two about, tell Gani, after all, what is there in life? Why not just leave it to him? And some such say, so that encouraged Gani, and he said yes. But the biggest surprise of the meeting was Padri's decision to say no. And Baba himself was very surprised. He expected Padri to say yes, but Padri just inexplicably just wrote no there, and that was it. So,
do you know why he made that decision? Because he seems like a very tough character. One of those who would have been more fit for the life.
Probably, I think it must have been at a time when he had come to some sort of a limit of his endurance or something. And he realized that this was going to be a very taxing thing, because he had passed through many such new lives with Baba, in his old days. And he knew the rigors of what was coming. So probably he must have felt that he wouldn't be able to please Baba as he would want to, and so better to say no than to say yes and then be a burden on him. Probably that must be the thing. In any case, Padri's saying no was a great surprise to everybody, including Baba himself. Although, of course, he being all-knowing knew what was to come, but on our level, he was both surprised and a bit disappointed. So that the meeting was there. Manu also told us when after returning that the situation with the women's side, the same meetings were held with the women disciples also being called, and Baba expressing all these things there, and the seriousness and all the sadness and almost the weepings that happened because of the situation that would face them all. And Baba telling them each of them to approach him and say that they would be prepared to obey Baba's order. For them it was that each one was to come and say that they would 100% obey whatever Baba decided for them.
So they weren't asked for a yes or no?
I don't think so. For them, Baba had made the decisions, and they were asked to go and decide that they would obey Baba 100%. And so each one then came to Baba, and each one of them said, Baba, we would obey you 100%. And Baba seemed to be very pleased about it. And then he gave instructions to each one. Only 4 of the women disciples were taken by Baba in the journeys, and the rest in the ashram. Some of them were told to go back to their homes, some to other Baba disciples who were well-to-do, like Sunamasi and Khorshid were sent to Meherji's house, along with Kitty and Rano. And Kitty and Rano were given instructions to seek jobs and to help Meherji in the household by getting some some remuneration and helping for their expenses.
Yeah.
Then Baidul's family of Baidul's wife Soltun and her daughter Daulat were sent to Bindra house, along with Valubai, who was also one of Baba's intimate disciples. So the three were entrusted to us, and Papa, of course, willingly accepted the responsibility, and we were, of course, dependent upon Baba, and Papa had a little pension, so to augment the family resources, he volunteered to take any odd jobs at that time. So he did accept offers from outside for his engineering expertise in other things. So yeah, he was quite a practical person, and so he did accept jobs and tried to augment the family resources. So
what had been his response? Yes, no.
Yeah, I'll tell you that. So these were the orders. This was the situation, that people were entrusted to different families, and after returning, Iraj tells us that Baba he was really grateful to Baba that Papa was called for the meeting, because otherwise it would have been extremely difficult for him to convince Papa about what was going to happen in the new life. So Papa was there, and he realized the whole seriousness, and Iraj had to do no explanation. He remembered the time when he had to disband the whole household in Nagpur and leave everything and join Baba. So he thought that if Papa had not been called, then he would have faced a similar situation here.
Doing it a second
a second time. Because this was like leaving all contact and leaving for good. So it would have been all the more difficult to explain to Papa. But being there, Papa accepted everything, and including the fact that he would never see his son again. So that was how it was. But after returning home, the full impact of it began to sink into each one of us. And yes, it was a very difficult time we had. The situation was very somber and serious. Just to give you an idea, that one day we were having lunch soon after the meeting, and we were at the table. Papa was there, Manu, myself, Iraj, Mama, everybody. And some little argument took place between Papa and Manu. She was eating in a way Papa didn't like or something. So Manu was also in a very peeved mood. Everybody was in their moods. And some argument took place. And suddenly Papa got up and gave her a hard slap. We were all stunned. Never before my father did that. He was so distressed that this disturbed him so much that he just gave her a tight slap on the face, pushed his plate off and just strutted off from there. And then went near the bathroom, sat on the floor and began to weep.
Wow.
Yeah. We all were so stunned, we just pushed our plates aside and just dispersed from there. Then I went up to Dad and I said, Papa, what has happened? And he began to cry and said, I just don't know what's happened to me. I'm so confused. I never lifted my hand on my children. This is the first time this has happened. I don't know what's come over me. He was totally distraught, So this is to give you an idea of what that impact of that news was to the family. Yes, and it must have happened to so many Baba families all over the world. Yeah. So just imagine what Baba must be working with this sort of thing. It's a sort of work that Baba gets done internally, giving this sort of suffering to his people.
And this, before there had been the requirement to give up everything else for him, and now it would seem as though you would have to lose him also.
Yes. So it was as if the whole world for us had fallen apart.
Yeah.
What was there to look forward to then? Yeah. But eventually Baba gave us the courage to accept his will and wish, and gradually this initial shocks started to wear out, and we began to accept the inevitable.
What consolation would you find in a situation like that? Was there any?
The only consolation was just to accept Baba's wish. There was no other consolation. And Baba could be quite harsh about that. No soft compromises. You must learn to accept his wish.
Period.
Yes. Period. That's all. And he then gives you the strength to do it. Although it breaks you apart, as it were, it makes you feel that no, this is impossible. But then he makes it possible. And that is his divine greatness.
Now, as it turned out, you were going to see Baba many times in future years. But when this happened, you had no...
No, it was final. Yes, it was dead final. No, this is it. That's all. We don't see him hereafter, and we don't hear anything about him hereafter. And even if we did happen to see him hereafter, we would have to make every effort to turn away immediately and run away from the situation. Yeah. So this is how it was, and it was very much ingrained in us at that time. So much so that any sight of Baba, which happened later on, would make us instinctively turn away.
Wow.
Yeah.
What an order.
Yeah, he gives the order and he gives us the strength to carry it out.
Yeah.
So this was the situation, and of course Baba saw to it that each and every person who was dependent upon him was provided for, so that no one would be left in the lurch, because there were so many dependent families upon Baba. So in fact, there were three groups in the new life: the no walas, the yes walas, and the arrangement walas. The arrangement walas were the few people who were in charge of making arrangements to see that everybody was well provided for, and that the transition into the new life was as smooth as possible. And after Baba went into new life, to see that the dependents and old life people were looked after in Baba's absence. So Baba was very practical in each and everything. So because of this, the period after announcing this and the deadline of 16th October 49 is very close, I think there were hardly a few weeks, and everything had to be wound up. So just imagine the hecticness of the whole situation.
Meherwan and Meherwan, these teeming colonies.
So I remember my sister was here with her husband in Khushru quarters, this Ahmednagar. So there was a tailor called to sew dresses for the new life, these big kafnis, and the tailor would be there day and night. They were working furiously to get things ready in time, and Baba would be making trips to Meherabad to and fro, and there was hectic activity. In fact, Dheeraj recounts that on one occasion he had some errand at Meherabad, and there was this big car at his disposal, and once late in the night he was returning from Meherabad, and he was so dazed and so overworked, he was just driving mechanically, as it were. And suddenly he heard a splash, and his car was going full speed, and he realized that he had negotiated a rivulet in full flood and passed through it without realizing what had happened. You know this Shendi bridge, at that time there was no bridge.
Oh, I see.
The bridge that was built was much later.
Yeah.
So we had to negotiate the Nala. It was a rivulet.
And this was
This was monsoon, yeah. So it was in full flood, and if it could have, the car could have been just washed away in the flood, and he suddenly realized that he had passed through it. So such was the amount of strain that people were undergoing to get everything and wound up. So many things Baba sent off to Bombay and other places to be sold out from the ashram, to provide for expenses and all that. Yes. So I remember there were huge tables in Meherji's house also, and all these Baba's articles would be there for sale, for Baba people to go and buy them. So we bought a pair of Baba's chappals from there.
Oh.
But unused, new chappals. Yeah. Anything excess, Baba said, must be disposed of. Nothing should be kept. And poor Naja would try to say, Baba, but this would also be... No, now nothing is to be required. I'm not coming back.
Wow.
So everything had to be sold off,
Baba would, it was doing this so quickly. They had waited 6 months. Everything could have been done in a leisurely way. That was not his wish.
No, the deadline was so close, and the ironical thing was that just a few months before that, Baba made a trip to Pune and all. Elizabeth had sent 2 big cars for Baba. I think Studebaker or something. 2 huge big green colored cars. They were, I think, 9-seaters. Long things. This Mandli Hall was garage for one of the cars, I think. Yeah. So Elizabeth sent these cars so that Baba can travel in comfort for the rest of his journeys and all that. But by then, Baba had, so this was just before the New Life, mind you. So on Baba said, let's go for a trip. So Baba came to Pune with the women, and Baba said, do you all do shopping for Mehrazad? Now we have settled here. So they all started to shop, and Baba would take interest in what they would get for money. Got a nice little water can for watering little shrubs in the garden. So all these little details would be there of filling up the place, And here Baba was quietly devising that time to leave it all. So right up to then, nobody knew what was coming. Yeah.
Was there an opportunity given for his old life lovers to see him a last time before he went?
No, there was no darshan program after that. Yeah, he came to Pune before going into New Life to meet us for the last time. And he met all of us at Bindra House. He went to Baba House also. And in fact, when At the time of parting, I remember his parting words to me in the car was, "Look, Iraj, I'm taking along with me to look after me, and your duty will be to look after the family." So see how practical Baba is always, so that Iraj should have undivided attention to Baba and I should look after the family. Although I was still studying and hadn't completed my studies.
You were about 19 at the time.
19, yeah. And I was still going in college. But Papa and I were to look after the family. So that was the job given to me. And so saying, Baba left. And that was the last I saw of him before he went into the new life. So that was how Baba entered new life, with a big bang. So, of course, these were just a few days before that, and then 16th October dawned. It was, of course, a very wet and desultory day, just as you mentioned this morning. Quite wet and stormy, windy, and we were in our minds thinking that Baba is embarking on the new life today, or with the women and the men mandli, and what hardships they would have to encounter. And it was quite a hard life that they had to undergo, of course, right from day one. Iraj drove Baba and the women mandli from Nerazad to the railway station. There was no overbridge at that time. So it was a level crossing with a gate. And so all the old life people were on this side. No, not many were allowed to come, only few who had been instructed were there. I think Sarosh was there to take back the car, in which Baba and the women travelled. So they got down there and it was raining, Iraj said later. And I think Baba met for the last time some who had been there, and then after they crossed the railway line, then everybody had to turn their faces away and not to see them again. And that was it. And then Baba started to walk, and poor Gani's travail started because the thing he hated most was exercise.
And the new life, especially then, was nothing but exercise.
So there's a description of how this long walk started, and Gani had never walked in his life more than a few steps, So this long march of miles, and Baba had given them instructions to keep close, but Gani was lagging behind, walking with his stick at the back, pushing himself along. And Baba turns back and sees Gani's plight, and then goes back, holds one end of Gani's stick and slowly leads him on. That much of walking had to be done that day until they reached the rest house, and Baba walks with him, travels along, as it were, helping him, and eventually they reach the place and Gani is all exhausted. So such is the way the new life began. But there was only one little consolation, and that was that in the new life Baba asked Dr. Nilu to maintain a daily record of the the new life that was being led. And he would keep an account, and then I think every fortnight he had to send out a sort of a bulletin of new life that was being led. And so this was the only little contact that was kept.
Oh, so you would hear that?
Yeah, so these circulars would come out from time to time, and we would get just brief, sketchy little things. Mainly it would be weather that Nilu would be describing, and we would curse him for that. Couldn't he think of any other thing, what they were doing? But I suppose he had instructions not to divulge much about what was going on at that time.
The earlier New Life circulars, I think, were written by Ghani, and they're much fuller.
Oh, I don't know.
At least the New Life circulars that are there now.
What about Nilu, Dr. Nilkan?
He took over, I think, after maybe January or February.
I see.
The first 3 months, as I remember, from October to the end of December, was a kind of training period.
Yeah.
And then Ghani was doing it.
But then who was writing, Nilu or Ghani?
I think at first Ghani.
And then
very quickly
Nilu took over.
Right.
Yeah, so they headed for Belgaum from here, and I think up to Shirur they walked, and then Baba said that's enough for the time being, and then a bus was called or something, and they went up to Pune, and from there they boarded a train, I think, and went to Belgaum.
You had no idea they were going through Pune?
Nothing. Zero. Absolutely no information. So in Belgaum, of course, I think it was not quite ready, and all the descriptions are there of how they passed the days in Belgaum, and then about Daulat Singh and how he was sent back. But these things were not known to us then at all. Nothing of this was known. It was much later we heard about all this. Yeah. And Daulat Singh, when he was sent back, he was traveling all over India, and one day he just turned up at Bindra House gate for begging. And Papa saw him and called him inside. It was a very happy reunion.
Did he tell you anything about the new life at that time with Baba?
I think he must have given some information, but it's now so long ago, so I don't know what transpired. But Papa and he were talking with each other, and we would come and give him food. He had this begging bowl. And
did he have the turban and everything?
No, not the new life dress, I think. But he was shouting for bhiksha outside on the gate. And surprised to see him there.
I mean, at this point, you were 19 years old and Baba has gone forever. Did you have any... I remember when I was 18 or 19, there'd be certain images of what my life would be like. I mean, did you have any sense of how your life would be led now that Baba was no longer in it?
I had to just pursue my college yet, so I didn't give much thought to that. And Baba's ordered that to look after the family.
So you had that.
So, yeah.
It was clear.
So it was clear for the next few steps, and just leave it to him to let life unfold itself.
Baba had never said, especially in India, the emphasis on getting married is very, very strong in most families. Baba had never given any indication about that?
No, not to me. Not that time at least. So I was to pursue my education and finish that. So there was no question about that for the present. And looking after the family was there. It was like a sort of marriage, to look after mother and sister and the other members, Daula, Soltun, Walubai. Walubai, by the way, was not very good in health, She had been suffering from malaria in the ashram, and some medicine which was given didn't suit her, and that made her go out of mental balance also. So she was not very stable at that time. And so Papa had this additional responsibility. But she was quiet, not very violent or anything, but would be to herself and just would keep working in the garden, a little patch of garden we had in front of Bindra house. So she would keep tending to that and would be herself, as it were. Very nice lady, but somewhat in shock, I think, to be sent out like this. And Soltun Daula, just helping in the kitchen and the family, because they were not educated or anything, so they couldn't do any jobs outside. But Manu was told to start doing something, so she started to learn typing and shorthand, along with Khorshid, Irit's wife. So they both, Papa called one typing tutor. He had a typing class, but he was specially called here and would give typing instructions. And so they were learning this quite in earnest. And eventually Khorshid got a job in some company as a stenotypist, and would earn some income and help the family. But Manu, being a little timid in nature, just did a little typing and then she forgot all about it. Helped mostly in the kitchen. And I, of course, continued with my college. It was, I think, my second year in college.
Which college were you at?
Navroz Jiwadia College, near the railway station. So that was it. And then Baba, of course, travelled from Belgaum to the north of India. He was there for quite some time.